school secretary. Both of those people with Bill are the right people to kind of identify the kids in most need, because they're constant contact with families. And then, families, sign off for it. So it's definitely something that, they know is coming home, which is really good. And on Fridays, they just come down to the office, we put it in their backpack, and then they just go home. So it's a great program for us. And like Dr. Miller said, it's a nice big bag of materials that we don't that any kid can access and eat over the weekends, and they look forward to it.
Okay. Thank you.
As far as I believe health and nutrition was kind of our next area of focus. We've done a couple of things in our cafeteria that have really helped not only the bottom line of our cafeteria, but I think also helped the kids to have more nutritious meals. We know that a well-nourished brain is more likely to be a learning brain than one that's starved of proper nutrients. So in addition to having the breakfast program, we also have, when kids come into our cafeteria, the first place they stop is the salad bar. Fill up with fresh fruits and vegetables, and then go into the rest of the line. We've gotten rid of a lot of the canned vegetables, and we've saved about $30,000 in part by making that change, so we don't have, boiled broccoli in the line and fresh broccoli on the salad bar. Really been able to reduce some of the food waste, and also try and get kids the most nutritionally optimal meals possible. We've also really focused on making sure we protect recess, thinking about the neuroscience and how exercise relates to having the proper neurological conditions for learning. So we make sure we protect recess. We moved recess before lunch. A lot of these things don't seem like big deals, but our theory is that over time they add up to more learning for kids. So rather than having kids fill up at lunch, go out to recess, and then puke up their lunch because they played too hard, we send them out to play before lunch. The other thing it seems to have helped with is the level of energy in the lunchroom. Don't get me wrong, it's still plenty energetic in there, but when the kids have had a chance to get some of that nervous energy taken care of at recess and then come in and have lunch, seems to have made the lunchroom environment a little more enjoyable for the adults as well as more effective for the kids. Mr. McLaughlin, you want to add anything on that?
That one's an ish. I spend a lot of time in the lunchroom, so it's kind of, it's definitely that one's definitely up in the air. No, I really think that the recess before lunch, actually the whole idea there was just to, we don't want kids rushing to, or not eating anything and then just looking forward to recess. They're out there and then they come hungry, and that's the great thing for us. The lunch staff does a really good job with fruits and vegetables as well, like mangoes and pears when they're in season. So that's been a really great addition to our school for sure.
All right, well, maybe we should move on and talk just a little bit about our after school program. As you know, in Nebraska, the vast majority of parents are working, and so there's the challenge of what do you do with your kids after school? I don't know how many of your schools offer an after school program. I believe we have anywhere between 60 and 100 kids a night in Matt's building for an extra 2 hours. They get a snack, have the opportunity to engage in extended learning opportunities. Something that we really try to do is give kids in poverty the same opportunities that kids in affluence would have. So for example, with our summer school after school program, we tried to run it like summer camps with sports. And so our basketball coach ran a basketball camp. They had a football camp, a volleyball camp, cheerleading camp. So trying to give kids from every background the opportunities that maybe kids in suburban Nebraska might have access to. Matt, you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, just like the various club opportunities. We found with our Pathfinders program, like Dr. Miller said, anywhere from 60 to 100 kids show up, and our building total is 215, around that. area. So we have a substantial portion of our kids staying. One thing that we've kind of noticed is, you know, kids, they want to be at school. We can't get them to leave at 6 o'clock. There's still kids, you know, around, and just trying to make sure that they have a safe place to be. Dr. Miller made an interesting point when he talked about working families. And if you think about where Scottsbluff is located and where Alliance is located in Bridgeport, Bayard's kind of, it's sort of like a bedroom community. So a lot of our families will work in Scottsbluff and then travel home. So most places get off at 5. So it takes about 30 minutes to get back. So we have an opportunity to have families, you know, rest easy that their kids are being looked after and that they're doing some really great things at school during the program. So I don't know what that equates to as far as dollars and cents, but I'm sure it's a ton of money saved by parents by offering a free after school program for their students. And that's that's a 21st Century Learning Community Center. So that's a really great program. If you don't have one, I definitely encourage that.
I'd like to jump in here real quick. Another part that as a teacher I like about the Pathfinders program is they also have a homework club with it. So kids that are behind on work or don't have the help at home, support at home, they have the opportunity to go to the homework club and work on their homework also. As a parent and as a teacher, I really appreciate that.
One benefit we hadn't anticipated is the reduction of criminalization of elementary kids. We used to have continual issues with the police dealing with misbehavior by elementary kids around town, vandalism in the park, things like that. I can't think of a single incident that we've had since we started our after school program. So we're going on about 5 years of you know, at least no criminal activity by elementary students that's made it onto my radar. So that's something I think has been really a great benefit to the community.
How do you staff that?
How do we staff it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's staffed. We have a program director, and then we have I think there's 5 different paras that run it. That part has been a little bit tricky over the years, but it's something where our program director has switched 3 times, but we've had this one for the last 2 years. So we think she's going to be sticking with us for a while, which is great. The para hours are from 2:30 to 6:30. So we've been really looking hard at finding other positions in the school to kind of balance out and make it a more accessible job for people to make into full-time work. So we've done some stuff with like early childhood para in the morning and after school para, so they have like a split shift, but it's a full-time position. So just using those opportunities in staffing to get high quality people. But it's para, we have para educators that run the clubs, and then we partner with community people. We've partnered with the zoo before. We've partnered with just all sorts of the bird center. There's a whole bunch of different partnerships that we try to get with. Girl Scouts holds their weekly meetings at our school, and we count all those kids to our population too, which has been really nice. So kind of opening it up to be like Bayard's community center, since we don't have one.
Who's the program director? Just somebody from the outside?
Yeah, Mrs. Mogg is she's a certified teacher actually, so she subs for us too. But yeah, we wrote in our grant that the person would have a bachelor's degree in, I think we said it was in education. So we've had my old high school science or Spanish teacher was our first program director, which is, but yeah, so we've had certified teachers be our program administrators.
Well, if it's okay with everyone, maybe we'll move on to social emotional diversity. Kids coming in with various levels of self-understanding, awareness, maybe touch on the mental health aspects as well.
Yeah,
we have a belief that if the kids don't have the skill set, then it's our job to teach them. So in terms of curriculum, kind of that tier 1 approach of, if you want to call it MTSS, or just general curriculum that's offered to all kids. We do a second step social emotional program in grades kindergarten through 6th grade. I think there's actually a preschool component of that as well. That's team taught with the guidance counselor and the teacher. Teachers have follow-up lessons. And one of the things that is really important that has kind of been a challenge for our teachers is, we don't outsource this program to the counselor. It should be a team effort. That way the teacher can follow up with reinforcing those lessons as things come up where kids have opportunities to interact with one another throughout the week. So it's really important that you have the counselor and the teacher team teach that, so the teacher can do that follow up. We just want to really establish those baseline skills about how do you handle conflict, how do you deal with a variety of feelings and emotions, and so providing some actual instruction to kids is a strategy that we've been working really hard on. We're also what's called a Leader in Me School. That's a partnership we have with the Franklin Covey Institute, and basically we teach the 7 habits of highly effective people to all of our students, K through 12, and that's a CASEL certified program. So again, a social learning endorsed program. Then when we have a partnership with the Nebraska Department of Education to do what's called the Good Behavior Game, and there's a strong research base behind the Good Behavior Game and student behavior and success later in life. So we kind of have what I would consider 3 tier 1 initiatives at the elementary school. At the secondary school, we have a program called 8th grade that we teach our 7th graders in a 1-quarter section. And then we've been working really hard to just promote the message of kindness. You're all familiar with the Be Kind movement across the state. And so we were able to partner with Team Concepts earlier this year, bring in Josh from Kearney and have him take our students through his new program called the 4 Pillars of Kindness. And just really trying to create a culture that supports students treating one another with respect and support, and also building some resiliency and skills in the kids for how they handle the variety of challenges that come up in day-to-day life. Mr. McLaughlin, do you want to talk any more about kind of our tier 1 socio-emotional approach?
Yeah, I think the other thing that we do in tier 1 is definitely just our common behavioral expectations. So those are, like, we call them cores, but I'm sure a lot of elementary buildings have common behavioral expectations stuff too. But that's, if there was anything that was missing on that, I think that's basically it. The 7 habits lesson has been the 7 habits program has been really amazing. It's really big in Colorado, and I think there's only 2 other schools in our state right now that have Leader in Me schools. But if you haven't read up on Leader in Me stuff, it's really cool. I definitely suggest just at least looking at it, because I think just as a parent of 2 kids that have gone through a couple of the different grade levels, this is Henry's 2nd year at it, and Lila's as well. They're starting to kind of use those language phrases and habits at home, and that's been a really great thing. We're just really pushing hard for getting the best information out in front of the kids. We learned about that, or actually I learned about the 7 habits when I first got my principal job, and one of our juniors went through the training with our now high school principal, and she was talking about begin with the end in mind, being proactive, and all of those different things. And I was like, this sounds amazing. And I knew it was impacting her as a 17-year-old kid. And her mom's my secretary, so we got a chance to talk a lot about it. So it was just kind of an important realization for me of the importance of having like great stuff in front of kids.
Moving on to like the tier 2 approaches, when the tier 1 efforts haven't been enough, we've been using a program called BASE. It's from Odysseyware, and that allows students to do some training on the behavioral types of work. Has some drug addiction, alcohol addiction components as well. When a student misbehaves, principals have been able to actually make completing some of these modules a condition for return to the regular classroom from in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension. Probably been used a lot more at the high school than at the elementary. We have a program called skills streaming, where the guidance counselor in the elementary school works on skill deficits with kids. So, they don't know how to behave. Let's try to teach them how to behave. And the skill streaming program has been really helpful. We have an 8th grade student that comes to mind that I didn't know if he was going to live through elementary school. And the guidance counselor spent a lot of time working with him on the skills streaming. He's a kid that I think that program and the efforts of our staff may potentially save his life. His ability to interact with other people is much improved. He's the kind of kid you worry about getting stabbed in a bar because he doesn't know when to quit. And he's learning some of that stuff. So the skill streaming has been great. School psychologist leads what's called a circle of friends. That's an approach probably a lot of your schools utilize to just help with that tier 2 effort. And then we have a behavior para in the K-6 building now. We never had one in the past. Mr. McLaughlin, you want to talk about that effort and what you're doing there?
Yeah, so our behavior para is kind of a lifesaver for me. It's just somebody that we can really make sure that we're using some of those early tiered things like check in, check out with a variety of students that might not have an opportunity to check in with a trusted adult throughout the day. So that was like one of the major things. So currently, like there's probably 13 kids in our school that have that as one of their targets. Like we want to check in and with a positive adult every day and check out and making short-term goals throughout the day as far as behavioral expectations. So we've really used her a lot for check in, check out. She's also in charge of de-escalation. Like I told her when she first was hired, like, let me get the kid into the room and calm down, and then you work with the kid. So that's kind of like the method with our para, and she's been able to do some check, like I was saying, check in, check out, and just some cool down methods, and just forming relationships with our most needed kids in the building. So she's definitely working her tail off, but I think that's been a great addition to our building, especially when you consider how important the relationship aspect is to our kids.
Then as far as tier 3, we have consorted our Title IV money with ESU 13, and they've hired a behavioral consultant. So we have somebody who's a licensed mental health practitioner who's able to come and work with our students and families as well. So that's we're just starting our 2nd year of that. Really excited about what it may mean for helping those students. We do have a program at our ESU, an alternative program. We're within about 30 miles, so that's we're fortunate to be able to be within driving distance of an alternative school for our high school kids. We're utilizing our school psychologists beyond special education testing. If you look at the NASP, the National Association of School Psychology practice model for school psychs, they really have a tremendous set of tools and skills to help students learn and teachers teach, but we underutilize them in schools all across this nation because we just use them for testing. And a lot of that is tied to the way we fund school psychologists. So we make sure that part of that school psych contract comes from our poverty funds so that we can serve all kids, not just students in special education. So that's been something that we hope to expand. We're actually advertising for a school psychologist right now. So if you know of anybody looking for a job, please send them our way. We'd love to have them. Yeah. And then our service units started what they call IOP, stands for Intensive Outpatient Service. And basically what they do is they send a mental health practitioner to help do some intensive counseling in our community for students. So they have a process that you use to get a student into that program. But transportation is a major issue in rural America. And so if we can bring the provider to the school or the provider to the community, instead of adding to the financial burden on families of making them drive to Scotts Bluff during the middle of the workday when the provider's open, we think that's got to really help some of our students. So Anything that you guys would like to share about what you're trying, or any follow-up?
We have a lot of work to do on things. A lot of great ideas. Thank you.
Yeah.
We did just start last year allowing counselors, outside counselors, to come in and meet with students during the day, and that's been a really good success. I think we're up to one who drives from, is he from Minden, Dr. Terry?
Farming.
I think it's Minden, actually.
Oh, yeah.
He comes up 2 days a week. We've been able to fill 2 full days just within our school district between kids and then sometimes their parents. So it's just our second year with that, but that's been helpful.
Couple questions I thought of. So what, with the behavior para that you've got in place, how has that support impacted office disciplinary referrals that you would typically deal with, and just the time element?
Well, I think one of the areas now, what are we in, like 6-7 weeks into school right now? One of the areas that we've seen a lot of is just for me freeing up some time, where we have a couple of severe kids that take a long time to get back into class, and instead of me sending the kid home for the day because I'm done with them, like I've worked with them as much as I can do, I have another person that can and go a little bit further with them and work that way, which has been nice. When you compare like some of the disciplinary measures that I've used in the past, sometimes a lot of times, like when a kid gets to the office, they don't really need to see the principal. They just need a place to be supervised and be, to calm down before they get back to class. So it's helped us kind of streamline the visitations. We've been taking a lot of different stats on it. I have a photo on my phone. It's probably the best I can do. I'm sorry, this is going to be weird, but let me find it. We have a scoreboard that we're using. Come on, work. So there it is. This is a scoreboard. So she sees on average about 13 kids a day, and this has changed for the last. We just updated it this week. But the scoreboard basically kind of tells us her interactions that she has. So each interaction actually. Average time on them is about 45 minutes. So she spends about 45 minutes with kids, and that does include check-in, check-out. So like her check-in, check-outs can be very short and very sweet, but when you average all the time up, each visit is taking about 45 minutes. So the short check-in, check-outs, and then the long times with students. So that kind of gives you an idea of like where her time's spent. Part of that picture is also kind of tells you a little bit about, I'm sorry, this is so so her purpose that she sees in A or B, academic or behavior, and the majority of the time she's spending to the account of like 91% was with kids in stress or through a behavior related issue. But what really helps me do is have her go and make more relationships with kids, so that the first time that they see her is not a bad doesn't leave a bad taste in your mouth or whatever. When I was teaching school in Wichita, we had something that was kind of like it, but it ended up being a terrible idea just because teachers would put them to this room and then it'd be just a warehouse for naughty kids, and that's not what we want. We want to have a method to get them back into the classroom after they're calmed down and make a plan. So yeah, that's that. I know. We could talk about mental health a bunch. We got a few other things that we want to go to too with the last 15 minutes.
Let's go ahead and talk about early childhood, Matt.
Sure. Lindsay, you talked about your having a new early childhood program. So we just wanted to let you know we're kind of in the same boat with you. We've had our program for about 6 years now. The important part that kind of separates us a little bit different than most programs across the state is the concept of making things convenient for families and offering our program 5 days a week. That sometimes is kind of controversial. I don't know if you guys are doing 5 days a week or not, but that was one area that I think creates a little bit more routine in families and makes it a little easier for for us to serve the needs of kids with working families. So that was one thing that I know out west we have a lot of people. We have a lot of programs that run 4 days a week, but we think that we can work with substitutes to get our teacher opportunities for planning and home visitations and things like that. So that's one area that we're really kind of firm on, is having a 5-day program with a sliding fee scale. And Tiger Care has also helped out with families that can't afford it, even with the sliding scale fee. So those are some really good opportunities for kids, and we just want to make sure that they're getting the most out of it, regardless of their background or their ability to pay the tuition.
Yeah. Just from the financial standpoint, we partner with Head Start, so our preschool is also a Head Start, which is great. That allows us to have 10 students that attend each year at no cost to them. Thinking about the diversity of our patrons with income levels, the Tiger Care program has really helped families that are kind of in that working middle, where it's a burden to cover all your child care costs and pay the propane bill and work 2 minimum wage jobs per parent and figure out how to raise your family in the meantime. And we've gotten out of the business of sending families to collections because they didn't pay their bill. We've also got out of the business of telling families, your kid's not going to be able to come to our preschool if you don't pay. We just make sure the kid gets educated, and we figure out other ways to help those families that aren't able to pay the price of admission to the program. So just thinking about, you hear a lot about universal preschool. We're very blessed to be able to offer that in our community. Any kid between the age of 3 and 4 who wants to attend preschool can show up, be part of our program. We're fortunate to have enough capacity to be able to do that. But in terms of just thinking about equity of opportunity for kids, we think we're really making a difference by having that 3 and 4-year-old program that every family can financially be a part of.
I think the next topic that comes up for me is mobility. And I think Steve talked a little bit about home support and things like that. So I just kind of wanted to go over some of the things that we do for mobility, because, that's one of the things that it's like one of the worst things that can happen to students is mobility. So we got a couple of different things that we're pretty strategic in doing that I think are really interesting, and I hope you guys can do something like it too, or if you haven't, just let us know what your thoughts are. So 2 things that we have going on right now. The first thing is an induction program. Basically, every kid that comes to school that's a new family to school gets a pamphlet that says, here's your teachers, here's what our school map is, here's some basic things to help you be successful for families and the child. We have one for the elementary level and then one for the high school. So it's just basically, there's some community stuff in there. There's pictures of all the teachers and then contact information as well. So it's a lot of really great things to send so that they have that as kind of a, here's us, this is what we do. And then the second thing that we do is peer mentoring program. That's new this year. It's just starting up now. So that's like one thing that we'll see how that goes. But we know that making a friend that first day and having somebody to kind of show you the ropes is a great advantage to kids, because school is a really lonely place without friends. So it's just an opportunity to pair our great kids and give them another leadership role as a peer mentor to show the new kids the ropes. And like Dr. Miller was alluding to earlier, we do have 30% of our kids are listed as mobile. So that's quite a bit of mobility in our school district.
If I can hop in here real quick, the peer mentoring program as a teacher kind of goes along with our Leader in Me opportunities. So some of those kids that maybe didn't make student council, they still have that leadership opportunity within the school to kind of make a difference and to build their own self-confidence. And I think it's a great thing. I know I was in the office the other day when we had some new family members come in, and the mentors were pretty excited to show the new kids around school. So it was a really neat opportunity.
Yeah,
Yep.
those kids. I mean, we want everybody. Like leadership isn't everyone, so that's kind of like the goal is like pick those kids that that can do this type of work and just give people an opportunity to be leaders in our school in a new and different way. So that's a really great thing. The last thing that we do as far as mobility, and this is through our CSI grant, but we were able to get to employ somebody that's the person that started our Tiger Care group. She's a community activist basically in our community, and she's just really great with our families. She's considered like her new role is family and home liaison. So basically, one of her job titles is home visits. So like what our preschool families get is a home visit from our teacher within the first 10 days of school, and we want that for every new family. So that's another thing that we're doing for our new families. And then the last thing is just getting some data on why they're leaving so that we can kind of track why families come and why they leave to Bayard. So a couple of different things that we do for mobility that, can hopefully have some impact in a thing that's very, very difficult for kids.
I think we'll talk about academic performance just real quickly, and then take questions or any further conversation. When you look at some of our student groupings, instead of a bell curve, maybe the student achievement looks more like a split screen, where you've got a lot of kids on the high end and then a lot of kids who are struggling. And so if we teach the grade level curriculum in the middle, we may meet the needs of no kids. And so we've been trying to think about how we push our high students while bringing up the low and meeting the needs of the few kids in the middle. And some strategies that we've used are a program called Tiger Time. Basically, it's a set of time during the day to focus on the unique needs of each child. 3 days are specific to reading, 2 are dedicated to math. And then if a child has some other needs, those can be met during that time. But just a time to really focus on the needs of each individual kid, trying to move toward a better individualization of the learning environment. And then, continuing to try and meet the needs of kids through the specialized programs, whether that's a 504 plan, special education, high ability learning is an area of renewed focus for us. One thing we found in our data is we have kids who are high achieving on NWEA, but maybe don't hit those high scores on the state test. And so that ultimately impacts our average scale score, which is part of our public accountability. So we're trying to make sure we're pushing those high scores as well as bringing our low students down. We're certainly not there yet. We're far from a perfect school, which is why we're trying to do all this stuff. We think a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how do we set the conditions to help every child have a successful learning experience. We haven't reached the promised land yet, but like Mr. McLaughlin said, if we see a need, we're going to do something about it and try and make our school better every day. Kind of that definition of excellence, better today than yesterday, better this week than last week, better this year than we were last year. So just continuously striving to get better. I'd love to hear your thoughts and anything that we should be doing that we're not, that you're doing in your schools.
I don't really have anything different than you're doing. Just some of the things that you're talking about, we're starting to implement the last couple of years. We just started this year, kind of like your Tiger Time. We're calling it extension and intervention time, but a time set aside to reach each kid's needs. It's been a struggle this year. It's a big change for a lot of our teachers. And then just the things you were talking about with behavior, social, emotional, having school-wide expectations. We've been trying to really think about teaching those behaviors and how that should look. Currently we are definitely still in that counselor comes in, teaches the expectations. So trying to figure that out. We've had a lot of planning and discussion, just haven't implemented a lot yet. A lot of discussion last year on an after-school program and how that could look. Our community was awarded a couple of grants, like through Susan Buffett, Communities for Kids. And so we're kind of taking more of a community angle on that right now. And I think we have a meeting in a month to go over our service array and kind of from there. So just a lot of the same things you guys are doing, which was awesome to hear from you today. So thank you. I got a lot of really great ideas as well.
You're welcome.
I know Kelly's not there, but a couple things, I guess something that we do that I kind of like to get your take on what you do. ACT prep, we use On to College with John Baylor. We have last couple of years now, we've decided to do basically 2 hours in the morning, about 10, 12 times throughout the year. We do like 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and then we run a 10 o'clock schedule the rest of the day, but from 8 to 10. We have sophomores and juniors. All sophomores go through the ACT fundamentals program, and then all juniors, and then depending on need, we look at that individually, where they just go through the regular ACT prep, which is a little bit, one's a 10 step, one has like 10 lessons in the fundamentals, and then the other one is a 12 lesson. With our freshmen, we do things for, like we have RDAP come in, we do leadership training, we do some of those expectations of behaviors and career exploration, strength finders, things like that. And then during that time, our seniors, which is probably honestly the most valuable thing, is our seniors and our counselor and another teacher who has a counseling degree. They fill out applications for colleges, scholarships, things like that throughout that time for those 2 hours. We feel like it's doing justice in all 4 of those for those classes, but I'm always interested in seeing what other schools are doing with ACT. It's just kind of a different animal when it comes to preparation.
That's incredible. That's totally that's a completely different way that I've ever even thought about it. That's great. That's a good.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't my idea.
Yeah, our approach on we do John Baylor test prep as well, or whatever it's called now, On to College, and you know, we've had some growing pains. We started out with the idea that the math teacher, run the math program, the science teacher runs the science program, English teachers run the English. Partially to have the teachers become more familiar with the content that's taught. One of the bad things about that is we've taken away, 8 class periods or whatever it turns out to be from their curriculum with that model. So I'm certainly fascinated with the concept of an 8 to 10. That seems like a really great approach. And maybe those teachers are still helping supervise during that time. We've tried the ACT test prep a few years ago. Kind of went away from it. Is it something that your students enjoy or seem to be learning from?
Well, you're always going to have, I think for the majority, yes. We're still tweaking things. Like this year, we used to assign a small group of 5 to 7 kids per teacher. But this year we changed it up a little bit to where we have larger groups, but we have 2 teachers per discipline area. So we have like our English teacher teaching reading and English, but they have like maybe an elective type teacher, art, shop, ag, whatever with them. So they become a little bit more familiar with some of those concepts. Putting social studies with English, I think will really help in the long run because they can use a lot of the reading and writing and give those kids more practice in their regular curriculum. So we've kind of paired it up and to where they're teaching to their strengths and be able to use that in the curriculum area. And I think that's going to be more helpful to where we might have an English teacher doing the same with that same group math. And now the groups rotate too. So every 3 weeks they get a new couple teachers. And I think that will help with the engagement, and that'll help with some of that stuff and not make it monotonous. I think looking at our ACT data, we've shown improvement across the board, and you've seen big jumps in individuals from like we have had a person the first time through had a 16. Of course, we're working on that too, because lots of times these kids' first ACT is the one that counts. And so now we're having sophomores this year also take the ACT in the spring. It won't count. We're just gonna, kind of proctor that ourselves. And so they'll have the pre-ACT in the fall, the ACT in the spring. And so by the time they're to the one that counts, they all count for them as far as college, but the one that counts for the school will be the third time taking it. And maybe for some fourth or fifth time if they do it, on their own individually. So
that's terrific. Yeah. Are you getting the 10th grade assessment?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Does the district pay for the 10th graders assessment?
No, we're just doing a mock ACT with materials that On the College provides. Okay. But we're going to do it in a way where it's, the same amount of time for the test and everything else. And we just, John Baylor recommends 4 times taking. And so we're going to have a couple practice tests. So by the time their first official will be at least the third time taking it. And I think that will benefit. It's a little aggravating to see a kid that comes in with a 16 and then by the time their fourth time they take it, they have a 23. And it's great for that kid and we're happy, but that would be great if we could use that 23 as part of our data.
Yeah. We've reached that 10 o'clock spot, and I know Matt and Travis has got some obligations they need to run to, and I'm sure we've got a principal meeting coming up in about 3 weeks, so we can maybe do some debriefing on this session and talk about the future. I want to honor everyone's time and thank you all for joining. I felt like this was a great start to this new endeavor that we're approaching. So thank you everyone for participating. It was nice. Thank you very much, Bayard Public Schools, for supporting us today. You had some great information for us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
See everybody in about 3 weeks.
Jeff will start training for a rematch.
Hey, I also saw your contract's up in June, so.
All right, I better train hard then.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, everyone.
See you, Travis.
All right, thank you.